Just, can we try, for the love of God, keep the mess down? Laundry ain't cheap.
Hello.
Look who's here.
How are you? Do I look Oompa Loompa? Do I look like Trump?
No, you look more like Veruca, but Marcus, how's Sacramento up there? How's everything up there?
Good. Like some of the smoke's starting to clear, so it's starting to look a little bit nicer out.
We got a dose of that here in Vegas. I'll tell you that. We had some bad air days too.
It's horrible. What a crazy world we live in right now, right? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've been in quarantine for 7 months, probably done about 200 Zoom interviews, 201 counting you. So,
do people say, man, it must be nice now that you don't have to fly all the time. But in fact, it's the opposite. We're hostage to whatever little room we do our thing in.
And not only that, I have been more busy than I have in 20 years doing all of these things at home, working from home. And it's just constantly, I must do sometimes 10 interviews a day. I've done like 8 today. I did like 10 yesterday. So I don't say no to anything. I'm just like content, and it's exciting. We always deal with big pictures, big tentpole films, but talking to independent producers, talking about film festival films and films like yours today. This has been exciting for a movie lover to see, first-time filmmakers and foreign films and documentaries. I'm having, I'm seeing a silver lining in this pandemic right now.
I see your side too. Like more people are putting themselves out there and making themselves available. So you end up talking to a much broader end of the spectrum of filmmaking.
Right. And not only that, but just people who get their chance in the spotlight, because everyone's asking about Wonder Woman or all these big films, but I love some documentaries and some foreign films. And so I'm having a good time, especially with PHarm, because Halloween is my favorite time of year. And Mark, it's all about the pitch to me. 4 people enter a corn maze for Halloween, picked off one by a twisted family who owned the scare attraction. If I was a producer and you came to me, I'd be like, that's it, let's do it. Because that is such a great pitch and a great premise. So were you passing a corn maze one day? How did this all come about?
No, it's funny. I did this Jerry O'Connell comedy called Ballbuster, and we were on the set of that movie. And we had just gotten funding for a much bigger movie that we were going to make about a year to the date. And so we knew we would be going into pre-production on that. My producing partner and I were at lunch during the making of that movie. And he said, this crew, the head of this crew just said, if you guys have an idea for a relatively quick shoot that we could do in about 90 days, we don't have anything booked in the month of January. And the DP of Ballbuster, this guy named Dante Iori, who's done like a gazillion sci-fi films. He does a lot of fun, nod and wink type movies like this. He said, we have October. If you've got anything in October, we can make a movie. My producing partner and I said, well, what can we do in October? What happens in October? Well, clearly Halloween. Well, what can we do that's in one location? We've just done a horror movie film called Apparition that was set in a single location, a haunted house. We don't want to do that again. And we thought, there's that guy, that crazy guy that has that corn maze. There really is this crazy guy that runs an operation called PHarm that is essentially a corn maze, but instead of like walking through it, you drive through it in a flatbed truck strapped to a seat with a paintball gun, and he lets you shoot at fake zombies in the cornfield. One, that's nuts, and it's fun to look at, and we thought, how do we flip that into a movie? And then we started thinking of maybe this crazy guy has alternate plans for making his attraction so successful and bringing in so many people.
It writes itself.
About a stone's throw from that crazy guy's PHarm also happens to be the Guinness World Record largest legitimate walkthrough corn maze in the world. And we thought, cinematically, let's stitch the two together and have them up to no good in this maze.
Well, this is your second return to the thriller horror genre. Are these the most fun to produce and write?
I think so. You and I have talked about movies to an extent, and I know you like comedy as well. I love comedies and I love horror. And horror is kind of the low-hanging fruit. They're a little bit easier to make. You can move a little bit quicker. You can be a little bit more creative in the way that you shoot them sometimes. And so, yeah, I love myself a good horror movie, to make or to watch.
And you're the writer of PHarm too, also along with Howard Bird. How does that work when you're working with a partner, when you're writing a screenplay? Do you have a specific kind of ritual or style? Do you work together? Do you email stuff or?
It usually is Howard and I over a meal, usually while we're multitasking on a different film, going, what if we did this? And it starts out on a napkin, and he and I are pretty quick to write out the beat sheets. Specifically with PHarm, like I said, we just had to start with that farm. How do we backtrack? How do we retrofit something onto this cornfield with the crazy guy who happens to have that attraction? So we sat, we marked out the beats on a napkin. I wrote a draft of it. Then Howard and I got together and rewrote that just to tweak, put in his ideas. He has some great ideas as a producer. And then we gave that to Dante Yor, who went in and added a character. If you watch PHarm, there's this crazy lady that I would liken her to somewhere between a ninja and Harley Quinn, Gemma, in this movie. Dante wrote that character in, which I thought was brilliant, put his take on it.
Well, I would think, because we have victims in this movie, we're counting the minutes till they all get slaughtered inside the corn maze. Did you guys argue over or come up with the concept? How do we knock all these characters off? I would think that was the first thing we're going to do, and then kind of fill in everything else, those segments.
Well, the first thing you start agonizing when you're making a horror movie, you start going, well, we don't want to do anything that's been done before. And so you start to agonize on how can you take someone out that hasn't been done before. And then you realize if it works, why fix it? So we started writing in every trope of every horror movie you've ever seen and dropping it into a place where it fits organically in this.
Now, as a producer, you tend to cast older for younger kids because you would have labor issues. So was that always something in the forefront of your mind that you can't actually cast a 15 or 16-year-old because then, you could only work so many hours a day? Because some of your guys look a little older,
Well, let's be honest. They don't look like Stockard Channing in Grease. Not that big of a leap.
Not that old, no.
They are, are you saying they couldn't pass in high school students? You're breaking my heart.
No. Just who's the crack up guy? The guy who had jokes every 2 seconds. He looked a little, miscast.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Everyone else passed. Everyone else did. But he was just like, sometimes you're just like, but I totally understand.
Yeah, okay. So Chris Leary is probably, at the time we shot this, Chris Leary was 23, 24. And you're right. He doesn't pass. He's a little too sharp. And his wit is not such, it's not the style. His writing, and that is Chris Leary. Chris, by the way, we gave him license to rewrite a lot of his lines. So, and I love that about it. Right. That's not in the vein that your average high school student, the vernacular of the average high school student. So him, yeah, I get.
Well, no, you did that.
Casting in LA for 18 to 25-year-olds that could play high school. We had over 2,000 people submit. Howard, Dante, and I narrowed it down to 200. And then we auditioned people at Space Station in LA and came up with this 4. And I love this quad of young actors we got.
Oh, they're great. And you have all the stereotypes. You have the jock, you have the cheerleader, you have the rebel, and then you have the comic guy. You can't wait to get killed 5 minutes into the movie, hopefully. But
and I should point out the cheerleader, we wanted, again, to not try to reinvent it, but actually make fun of some of the tropes of horror movies. Like there would be a cheerleader and she's going to get knocked off somewhere. So without plot spoiling too much, she's not a cheerleader. She just gets stuck in a cheerleader costume, and we lean into that, and she admits it.
The entire shoot, she has to wear a cheerleader outfit. I'm sure she wasn't happy, but now as the producer of the film, are you a hands-on day-to-day producer, or are you just about the money and the money man, or what role do you play as a producer in your films?
No, if anything, Howard started out as just a money man, one of those guys that would drop by the set, nod, point, run in some notes here or there, but pretty much brought the financing together to make sure that was all battened down. Howard, if anything, has evolved into being a no pun, roll your sleeves up kind of guy, because that's the side I come from. I love creating content. I love the technology of filmmaking. I've been making films since I was 8 years old. So I would say, yeah, I'm hands-on to the extent that if there's a bloody footprint to be made and everybody's busy, I will rip my shoe off, dip it in a vat of blood, and start making that footprint.
Well, you're in the tradition of Alfred Hitchcock. You got a cameo in this film. You're a zombie.
Yeah, and I like to point out, that's more for legal reasons than anything, because on the day, we consulted our attorney that handles such things, and we had a writer and a release to a certain extent that would allow people to do some stunts, but there's a scene in the movie where a character gets shot repeatedly in the nether regions, which could be potentially hazardous and life-threatening. We couldn't get anybody to do that. Our attorney couldn't get the form together and advised us to cut the scene. And I said, there's one way we don't have to cut the scene. I'll duct tape a plate to my crotch and go out there and take it like a team. Like take it for the team. And I did, and it made the cut.
You're dedicated to your craft, Mark S. Allen.
Whatever it takes. There's also one of those scenes where, keep in mind, this isn't a $25 million movie, so things will fall through the crack. And we're all standing around shooting a scene where a goofy, scary clown, fake scary clown, is at the open of the maze, and he's supposed to jump out and do a fake scare. Aha. And the director of photography said, all right, let's watch the shot. Has anybody seen the clown? Where's the clown? We started going down the daily call sheet. There was no clown called in. So I said, give me the costume. I'm going to go to wardrobe. I'll be right back. That's how that happened.
And you also have another film out from last year, Apparition. You want to give a quick pitch for that? Now available also on demand on Amazon?
Well, 'tis the season for scary movies. So once you've seen PHarm, I highly recommend Apparition. Kevin Pollak, who I know you love, is brilliant in this. Yes. Who would have thought Kevin Pollak is the bad guy? We had Cary Elwes in his part from Princess Bride.
Yes.
And at the last minute, he had in his contract that if a big film came up that he had to do, he could bail. He bailed 4 days out. We put Kevin Pollak in there and he crushes it alongside Mina Savari, who's brilliant in this. And the real star of the film is the Preston School of Industry. It was a castle that was built in California in 1855 because prior to that, all young boys were blended with the adult population at San Quentin. I mean, that's scary in itself. But instead, they built this evil-looking castle, which in fact became evil. Horrible things happened there. And this movie is based on the true evil things that took place at that castle. And then we made it kind of Hollywood where a kid creates an app that acts like a Ouija board that takes him back there. I'll tell you, behind the scenes of Apparition, a little Easter egg that I love about it. Did you ever see Talladega Nights?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, Walker in Texas, what are the kids' names? Texas Ranger?
Oh,
Will Ferrell's sons, Walker and Texas Ranger.
Texas Ranger, yeah, that's right.
Anyway, the little kid, the redheaded kid in that movie. We're all hopped up on Mountain Dew, Daddy.
Yes.
That kid is now a grown-up, and he's the kid in this movie that creates the app.
Oh, man, little Easter egg. I love it. And you know what? Final thing here, Mark. You're a film critic to a movie producer, and that's a very elite club who've done that. Because there's a handful of us that have been doing this. I went to film school, but 25 years later, I've been doing this. But to actually see someone break out from this and be on the other side of it, I just have to take my hat off to you and applaud you because you just don't talk, you do the walk. So you're just on your way. And congratulations on PHarm.
Oh, thanks, man. It's the fulfillment of a childhood dream. The whole reason I started reviewing movies was to get closer to movie sets so I could be, this close to Steven Spielberg, as you've done, and see how they do what they do. I've got to say this, Jeff, and I mean it sincerely. If you went to film school, it means you've got it in you. And I say to you, the name of my production company is Make the Movie, because Scorsese was asked, Mr. Scorsese, what's the most important thing to consider when making a movie? And he said, make the movie. There's so many people that are working on a script or they have an idea and they never make the movie. So Make the Movie. I guarantee you, Jeff Howard, you got a dozen movies in you and you have gone to the best film school in the world, the set of the most Academy Award-winning directors ever. You got it. Do it. Make the movie, Jeff.
You're my inspiration. I'll do it. In fact, I'm going to pitch you my horror film, so maybe you'll make my movie.
I'm ready. Let's go. Pitch.
Speed up.
Pitch away.
I will.
Jeff,
Off camera, though.
I'm not beside you on these. Go ahead.
I'm not going to let anyone steal their idea, so I'll tell you when we're done here.
I'll sign the non-disclosure. Hit me.
Well, congratulations on PHarm, and you stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.
Jeff, I love you show. Thanks for letting me hang out with you.
My pleasure. Thanks.